Welcome to our joint House and Senate pre-legislative town hall meeting. My name is Carla Drenner, and I represent House District 85 and serve as the chair of the House delegation. Let me tell you how we're going to run the show today. We're going to introduce ourselves and then open the mics up on either side for public comment. And we're going to give you 2 minutes. Representative Viola Davis is going to be the timekeeper for us. And rest assured that all of us will be taking notes, okay? So at this time, I'm going to let everybody take a moment, beginning with my chair from the Senate, Senator Jones, introduce himself.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? I am State Senator Emmanuel Jones. I represent the 10th District. And for those who don't know where that is, you're in it now. And this is my 18th year in serving. I am delighted to be here, looking forward to the conversation. And Happy New Year's, everyone.
Good morning or afternoon. I'm Senator Elena Parent. I am honored to represent the 42nd Senate District, which is our only Senate district that's wholly encompassed within DeKalb County. So I've got Decatur, Avondale Estates. I do come south of Decatur a bit, up through the Emory and CDC areas into the southern part of Brookhaven. And this is going into my 5th term in the state Senate. I also did 1 term in the state house, and thank you all for joining us. It's an honor to be with you today. And let me echo the New Year's greetings and put on your seatbelt since we're starting session on Monday.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Omari Crawford. I am the state representative elect. I still must say the elect because I have not been sworn in yet. I represent House District 84. House District 84 is a DeKalb County-based district. We are actually in House District 84. A little bit about myself. I'm a DeKalb County boy through and through. Grew up in DeKalb County School District graduate. Finished Southwest DeKalb High School in 2004. Went on to Florida A&M University undergrad in North Carolina Central for law school. I currently work as an assistant county attorney with the DeKalb County Law Department. I'm excited to work with this incredible delegation and to learn more about you all, learn about your needs, your priorities, and so I can better serve you. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay, let me take a pause moment for a second, and I introduce the officers of the DeKalb House delegation. Myself, there's the Vice Chairman, Doreen Carter, Representative Doreen Carter. The Secretary is Representative Becky Evans, and the Treasurer is Representative Viola Davis. And I don't want to be remiss in acknowledging the elected officials that are in the audience today. I believe that Michelle Long Spears, elect, is here. I'm sorry, Commissioner, and School Board Member Allison Gretz is here as well. I'm sorry. I'm West Virginian, and our enunciation skills sometimes are not perfect. I'd also like to say thank you to Jai Christian he is the assistant coordinator for the Porter Sanford Center. Thank you today for setting everything up. We really appreciate it. So, Representative Carter.
Okay. So we were coming that way. Good afternoon. I am Doreen Carter. On Monday, I'm really excited. I will be sworn in as the House District Representative for 93. My former district is 92. My district did change a little bit, so I have now DeKalb, Rockdale, and Newton County. And I was sharing with them this morning at the breakfast, I'm probably one of the few representatives that actually has urban, suburban, and rural in their district. So I'm like, okay, I could do that. I am hopeful that I will keep some of the committees that I have had the opportunity to serve. One in particular is I serve on the Education Committee. I serve on small business, special rules, industry and labor, and code revision. And I'm really hopeful this year that we will be able to tackle, if not all of the QB formula, at least parts of it, because it is very much antiquated. And I think there are some parts of that formula that we can address. And of course, we have some environmental issues, some housing issues, and issues. So I'm gonna close with this: don't pray for us, pray with us. And thank you all for joining us today, and Happy New Year.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Margaret Oliver. I represent House District 82, which is in the middle of DeKalb County. It goes from the city of Atlanta, it includes city of Atlanta, Emory Campus, and over to Stone Mountain Freeway. It has parts of northern Decatur, parts of Brookhaven, and that part of city of Atlanta that includes the Emory campus, and a very great part of unincorporated DeKalb in the middle. So I represent 3 cities, 1 county, and 3 school districts. And it's a complicated set of issues in relation particularly to annexations and changing possibly of school district lines when we talk about annexations in and around city of Atlanta and city of Decatur, which are 2 independent school districts, not county school districts. So we have issues too. I serve now as chair of the MARTOC committee, and I'm on judiciary and appropriations and juvenile justice and government affairs and science and technology. I'm very happy with the committees I have. I hope I keep them. We'll know sometime in the near future what that's true or not. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest. I'm going to put in a plug, if I may, for my newsletter, which you can go to my website, marymargaretoliver.org, because I ask you how you'll vote on things. In the newsletter that'll come out next week, I'm going to ask you how you will vote on ending the runoff system. And I'm going to ask you how you would vote on sports betting, and I look forward to how you'll vote. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Representative Viola Davis, serving Georgia House District 87, primarily in Tucker, Stone Mountain, and Pine Lake. I look forward to a productive meeting, and I really do want to hear your priorities and your concerns. I do serve at present on insurance, natural resources and environment, technology and science, also interstate cooperation. So if you want to stay in touch with what is going on at the Capitol, please go to violadavis.com and subscribe to my newsletter.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Long Tran. I'm the representative-elect for House District 80, which for me, luckily, it's only DeKalb, and it includes 3 cities, Dunwoody, Doraville, and Chamblee, and the DeKalb School District. So I can easily be a bit more focused when I get sworn in on Monday. I do have an ask for all of you here in this new year. Let's approach politics a little bit more different. Let's get more involved, not just attending town halls like this, but coming down to the Board of Education meetings, your city council meetings, down to the State House, and participate in whatever hearings we have, because the more we see you and hear from you, the more effective we are as elected officials.
Thank you, Lon. Yes, I'm Representative Becky Evans, and it's been my honor and privilege to serve for 2 terms. I'll be sworn in on Monday for my 3rd term. And my new district number is House District 89, and it's very similar to my prior district, but I did lose 3 precincts and gained 3 precincts. But I'm lucky to serve the beautiful portions of the beautiful neighbors of Ellenwood, Panthersville, Candler, McAfee, Eastlake, which is in Atlanta, portions of Decatur and Oakhurst, and portions of Druid Hills. So in our district, we have the annexation issues that Chairwoman Oliver referred to, so that's something that will be on my mind this session. And I also want to echo that your sentiment about thank you for being engaged citizens. It's really important that you're here today, and please stay in touch with us. And I invite you to sign up for my newsletter, BeckyEvans.com. And also, as the secretary, one thing that I did is we keep a guests of DeKalb delegation email distribution list. So if you aren't on that, if you email me, you can be added to that. And we haven't had officer elections for the next cycle. So the new secretary will keep up with that. But anyhow, if you want to be informed about delegation meetings, please let me know that. Or you can also add it to the sign-in sheet out front too. That's another way to do it. Yes, and I welcome. I agree with Long. It's George. It's the People's House. The Capitol is the People's House, and we are looking forward to having people back at the Capitol this year after 2 years of COVID. Thank you so much.
What a great group, right? Very talented. So I'd like to open it up to public comment now. Both mics are live, so please come forward and share with us.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having both a virtual meeting, town hall, and an in-person town hall meeting. We really appreciate that. My name is Mary Hinkle. I'm speaking on behalf of DeKalb Citizens Advocacy Council. As an organization promoting government transparency and accountability, we support state legislation to better regulate development authorities and hope that you will seriously consider legislation that furthers the Senate Development Authority Study Committee. Our own Elena Parent was on that committee, and Ms. Representative Mary Margaret Oliver was influential in that. But we support the recommendations for regulating and managing development authorities. Thank you.
Pull it down. You can pull it down.
No, I don't want to touch it. That's why I'm doing this. So I can, yes. So, but anyway, I talk loud. How are you doing? Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Bola Tillman, and I live in DeKalb County. How many of you subscribe to the next? Come on, that's my house. This sweet word. Seriously? Turn that thing off. Okay. Where was I? How many of you subscribe to the next forum? If you don't, you need to. Nestor, thank you. Yeah. If you don't, you need to. Because there's so many issues that we talk about pretty much every day. But the two biggest issues are crime and cleanliness in DeKalb County. If you've ever walked behind that McDonald's on Wesley Chapel, it is downright filthy. It's not nasty. It's not dirty. It is downright filthy. And for me, it's an eyesore. And almost everybody said they reach out to this person and that person. You guys keep passing the buck. We got to stop that madness. We got to stop that madness. The second thing is crime. That is so disheartening for me. I've never even believed in using alarm system. But now I have become a hostage in my own home. Because I have camera behind my house, in front of my house. If you step on my property, I will know. I don't want to live like that. Even in Nigeria, where I came from, I've been in this country since I was 17 years old. And I'm 60-something, but I'm not going to tell you what that something is. I will never live in any county but DeKalb, because I love DeKalb. But we got to do better. That's what I'm looking for you all to do. What are the solutions? I'm so sick and tired of talking about the issues every time. That's why I don't come to this town hall. You hear what we got to say, but I don't see solutions. Then you are going to come back in 2 years and ask for my votes. I better see something done by all of you. Thank you.
My name is Chris Griffin. It's 2023, and I'm different. I'm different than what I have been. So just as a word of warning, you all need to come up here and get in queue, because I will exercise my prerogative as a voter to continue talking until you show up to say your piece. So with that said, thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate it. And I am truly different this year. Those of you that know our history, I hope you'll see the difference. and that you will feel the difference, and that you will act on the difference. I'm a 50-plus year resident of South DeKalb. I'm a combat decorated veteran. You can see that I'm an old guy, and I'm at the point in my life where I just want to live my best life in a fashion of my choosing. I think we can see that there are others who agree with that. And the one thing that I want to make a point of, I've gotten through all of that history to get to this point where now I say, I want to vote. I'm tired of complaining. I'm tired of being the offensive kind of person that I've been in the past. I apologize for that. I ask your forgiveness, and I ask you to do your job, which is to give us an opportunity to vote on those matters that are important to us. I'm skipping down in my notes because I timed this, and this was a little over 2 minutes. But I voted for Senator Elena Parent and Representative Carla Drenner for the first time this past November. I don't miss elections. I don't miss elections, but I wanted to do something different because I had been complaining. Thank you. I had been complaining, but I want to vote. I want to vote because my property taxes have gone up over 90% in the last 4 years. That's because of the institutional investor activity that's going on in our neighborhoods. Our delegates are the only ones that can deliver legislation that we can vote on that will result in regulating the institutional investor activity. The county already has that authority, and they haven't done it. They haven't done it because institutional investors don't care about property taxes. They care about cash flow, and they pass on their property taxes to whoever they sell the properties to or whoever they rent them to. So now, what does that really have to do with me living my best life in a fashion of my choosing? It means that when my property taxes go up, because my home value has gone up, which I have no problem with, I need to be in a situation where the governing authority would keep my property taxes to a minimum. The county has all it needs, but we can't vote on a city. And a city can keep my property taxes lower than the county has done. We don't even have an opportunity to talk about that because our delegates have not supported us having that opportunity to vote. And I say that's a problem because every one of our delegation senators voted for somebody else's constituents to have an opportunity to vote on how they wanted to spend their tax dollars. Every one of them. That information is available on the General Assembly website. Only Representative Carter, Representative Evans, Representative Taylor, who's not here, and Representative Billy Mitchell voted for Mableton to have an opportunity to vote. Everybody else that you see sitting up here, with the exception of Representative Tran and Representative Mary Margaret Oliver, I don't track their voting behavior because I don't live in their district. But everybody else voted to give us an opportunity to vote. My ask is that you deliver us the legislation that will give us an opportunity to vote. That puts the monkey on our back. That means that I need to get with those people that agree with me and don't agree with me, and we have to work it out so we can cast an informed vote. Thank you very much.
Mr. Griffin, Mr. Griffin, can I ask you a quick question?
Please.
You've raised a number of really interesting and important issues in your comments. The quick question I wanted to ask you is, what neighborhood are you in specifically? Please remind me, because the institutional investor activity I know is an issue in all of DeKalb, especially in South DeKalb, but especially in certain neighborhoods. So I want you to remind me which
I live in
neighborhood you're
zip code 30032. That's your zip code and Carla Drenner's, Representative Drenner's zip code. Home sales prices have increased over 400% in that zip code since 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Bell, resident of DeKalb County in the same zip code 30032. I'm not going to go over with what everybody else has talked about, but I will hit on a few issues. I have to apologize, first of all, for not being more active myself in the affairs going on in my community. I have become active as of late because I've seen the decline. Like when I went to Snapfinger Elementary, it was a school of excellence. Now the kids can't read. The crime, yes, out of control. And the thing, when I was at Towers High School, we had shop class, things of that nature. We need to start funding free trade schools. We got free money for all this other stuff, food and testing centers and all this stuff. We need to invest in the youth so they have positive activities to do. Carpentry pays well, plumbing pays well, electrical work pays well, concrete pays well. We're letting the gangs come up with the activities instead of productive activities. That has to stop. We have to, maybe some people aren't, familiar with, certain aspects of the community and may need to inform themselves of this. It wasn't always this way. Like I said, Snapfinger was a school of excellence at one point in time when I went there. Some issues are local. Like these parks were built in the 60s. There's been no improvements. The institutional investor thing, it's a problem. I don't know how much, you guys can really do about it, but yeah, it needs to be addressed at some point. But I'm not going to hold up the mic, but my more focus is on the youth because that's where the deterioration of the community is coming from.
Yes, Mr. Bell, I share many of your concerns, and I want to just tell you two things. Workforce development is a key issue for the state of Georgia, and we realize that. And a big part of that is having a better technical school pathway for our students. And this has been a priority statewide, and in DeKalb, and my understanding is now in DeKalb as well. Piedmont Tech is an excellent school. They went through some leadership problems a while ago, but the past 3 years they've been under excellent leadership, and that is certainly a priority for our delegation to promote career pathways, working with our school board on this issue. So I just want you to know that we're very aware of that. And I do want to point out that currently in the state of Georgia, there are 14 career pathways where a student can get a free education. And so we need to do a better job of communicating about that. That's where the state has said these are industries where we really need workers. And so that's called the HOPE grant program. So If you go home and Google it, and we'll do it, and we'll work with our school board to make sure we get better information out to our students about that.
Yeah, because most of the programs, and I'm familiar with Hope and everything, but obviously it's not being disseminated properly in the community, or people are not taking advantage of it. But either way, we need to make that a priority, because either we're going to pay for it one way or another. And then the farmers down south are getting the advantage of the people that we're sending through incarceration. And I'd rather them be in support of their own community, being productive in their own community.
Thank you, sir.
You brought up an interesting point too about training, and I wanted to remind you of a project that this delegation, both House and the Senate, passed last year. Georgia Perimeter Technical College is building the largest logistical center in the southeastern part of the United States, right over in the Stonecrest area. That's going to be roughly $11-12 million facility. The resources and the funds have already been allocated. They're currently doing training over there on a much lower scale, so the state already owns the property. And some of the skill levels are going to be diesel mechanics, CDL, motor bus driver. I know Georgia Power even have training over there for power linesmen as well. So that facility those funds have already been allocated. It's going to be an expansion of the services that GPT used to offer at the facility on Wesley Chapel and that across from the Home Depot. Of course, they moved out of that facility, and we've been working tirelessly for the last year plus to get these funds allocated. So it is coming to South DeKalb. And may I add, this is the first time that it's really been federal dollars, state dollars, as well as local dollars, because Stonecrest contributed over $500,000 to this facility.
Right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Sandy Johnson, and my zip code is 30034. I've already had an extensive one-on-one with my representative-elect, who we are looking forward to working with going forward. I was prompted to stand because Chris Griffin hit on a couple of points that are near and dear to my heart, both as a resident of DeKalb County, as a realtor, as a citizen of the United States. I mean, we are looking at the devastation of our communities as we know them. And one of my big pet peeves is this thing called pad splitting. As I understand it in the state of Georgia, rooming houses are not legal. And pad splitting to me is no different than a rooming house. 2 doors down from me, I noticed multiple cars and people coming and going to find out that it had been turned into a pad split. And for those of you not familiar with pad splitting, it takes every room in the house and turns it into a locked individual bedroom. So there's no more living room, dining room, there's a kitchen and there's bathrooms. I don't know how to stop this. You guys are the legislators. We're asking you to assist in addressing what's happening to our communities. I did an interview recently with a reporter from the AJC on this topic, and one of the reasons that I see as a realtor that our communities in unincorporated South DeKalb are so heavily impacted is because we don't have covenants. Okay? So therefore there are no rental restrictions. So the investor sees, and Wall Street investors, and there are local investors and there are Wall Street investors. The Wall Street investors have analysts who are telling them where to target their dollars. And we are a primary target in our communities. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road. We can't continue to say it's okay because it's impacting quality of life. I've spoken with the county COO about code compliance. I've spoken with my commissioners about code compliance as it relates to this issue. We have to put forth a greater effort. I will tell you as a realtor in 2021, I had a highly qualified, multi-degreed, registered nurse working at Grady money in the bank, credit score, all the things you needed. It took us a solid 1 year to find that woman a house because investors beat us out even when we bid $30,000 over the asking price. Okay? So these are the kinds of things that are happening. So owner occupants are not a priority in this game today. And what ends up happening is you end up with the Wall Street investors not only controlling the price of the houses for sale, but they're also controlling the price of rents, because then they turn around and rent them. And then the little guy down the street says, well, if they're renting for $2,000 a month, then I'm going to raise your rent from $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Who's got $500 extra a month? I don't know. I don't have $500 extra a month to pay for rent when it comes down to just that. So there is a need to put some serious energy, and I know my time is up, serious energy into this topic of how we protect our communities. And for those of you who've been around long enough, I am a proponent of forming our own municipality in unincorporated South DeKalb so that we have that extra voice at the table.
Madam Chair, may I respond? This issue of institutional investment and real estate is one of the things that's changed most significantly in my long political career. 38% of the properties now are institutionally owned.
It's 58 and 3034.
And I was about to say that figure is
right. And it's a national.
It's debatable, but it is a vast moving change of the economy of home ownership. What is the biggest lobbyist against reform?
The realtors.
The realtors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're a very, very major lobbyist. And if you're talking about code enforcement, if you're talking about protection of tenants, I want you to think about how you can change this good advocacy towards the real estate realtor industry.
Well, we're not going to change the lobbying process in this nation, but we can.
What's the biggest number one lobby in the country? Real estate, realtors.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm simply saying that as the people, we still have to work with the system. And the system has changed. It's changing our communities. How do we legislate? How do we work with you as our legislators to help to make our communities the safe places where Dr. Bola doesn't have to worry about being held hostage in her house by the alarm systems, which speaks to the violence in our communities, the other things that are going on within our community. So the real estate issue is a huge umbrella.
Fast moving and huge.
But there's trickle down. So thank you all for your time.
Just one other point that I want to make about the institutional investors. I know I've been talking to a lot of people recently about one other part of my district, and it should be noted that these institutional investors are going to communities like South DeKalb, and certainly the city of Stockbridge is, I believe, was voted #1 in the state in terms of institutional dollars invested. And they're doing it because, and typically in the underserved communities, those houses and those housing values have been depressed. So those dollars are moving in there, and it's kind of taking over whole communities and whole subdivisions. And let me just add, it doesn't matter if you're in a county or in a city, those dollars are still flowing into our communities.
Madam Chair, may I make a quick comment? So here's what I'm going to ask of you so that you can work with us to push back against what's happening. I met with my mayors within my district and my Robert Patrick, our county commissioner. I need them, which means I need the citizens of the county and of the city, and especially in the unincorporated areas, to put pressure on your county and city to come up with legislation you want to see us put forth. And with pressure coming from the county and the city officials that you elect locally, that will allow us more leverage down at the State House, because we get pressured from both sides, the people who want to protect institutional investors and the people who are going after the cities trying to remove local control. keeping the cities from coming up with regulations. We need to hear more from the people, and part of that is having you come down to committee hearings, but the other part is making sure that your locally elected officials are putting pressure on us and showing us what they want to see as far as legislation goes for their city, for their portion of the county.
Good afternoon. These have been very informative meetings. I've been I am a 52-year resident of DeKalb County. I said I am because I'm about to be a 53-year resident of DeKalb County. So I have seen the transformation of DeKalb County, whether it's resources or services delivered. One of, in your Thursday meeting and again today, we've heard references to cityhood. And this is now, believe it or not, year 7. The feasibility was done in 2014. I don't know the value of it in 2023. But the question that we keep hearing is, we want you to give us the opportunity to vote. And then my question becomes, vote on what? And by that, I'm asking them, I haven't seen your charter. The last charter that was presented was in 2019, and that was House Bill 644. So there has to be some level of tie-in to community awareness. We can walk down Rainbow and ask anybody we run into that might be walking, are you familiar with the issues on cityhood? They'll look at you and go, what city? And this is after 7 years. So if you want, I think what we should shoot for, if we're going to be asking people to vote on it, let them see what they're voting on. The only thing that we've been able to see and evaluate is a 2014 feasibility study that says that the new city would be sustainable. Now, since then, we've had inflation, we've had a pandemic, and so the data that's in there is, I always put it this way, if I were an investor, going to an investor, and he gave me 2014 year data, I don't think I would deal with him. That's just my position. I wouldn't feel comfortable that that data was going to be in my best interest. So that's the way that we feel. And I represent a coalition of groups, DeKalb United. So it's not just me, my standing here. I'm speaking on behalf of 4 different organizations who are in opposition to cityhood. What I request from our delegation members is that you be open to having a conversation with the opposition as you would listening to those who are advocates. And I will grant you that there are legitimate reasons why citizens feel a city might do them better. They don't feel that the county has lived up to its responsibility on the delivery of services. But I want to plug the Charter Review Commission that both delegations sponsor and have members on that commission. We've had, we need to do a better job of communication because we've had 2 public hearings dedicated to nothing but talking about or getting citizen feedback on what they'd like to see changes, whatever their issues are. Those should be the drivers for whatever recommendations this commission ultimately makes. And so I would like to ask that you encourage your constituents. Our next meeting is January 12th. It'll be in person at the Maloof Auditorium at 6 p.m. But you can go online and find all the documentation from every meeting that the commission has had, videos, meeting minutes, presentations, background on the organizational act of DeKalb County. And for those of you who may not be familiar with it, when we're talking about a charter and why we say we need to see a charter before we talk about going and voting, because I'm going to be an informed voter. This governs, it defines by law. It becomes the law, the charter. So it's not like what I would like to see happen or how we should function. It becomes a law when it's approved. And if you don't know how the operations are going to be controlled and that kind of thing, then you're missing a big piece of information to make an intelligent decision. I respect people's intelligence. So you give me the information and I can make up my own mind what I do with it. So I again, thank you for your time, but please help us encourage participation in the Charter Review Commission to get people out to those meetings, and we will be publishing when we have the public hearing. It's 2 hours dedicated to nothing but hearing from the public. So I thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, delegates. Whoever spoke earlier about gun violence and the violence in the community, we have a very serious issue. I don't need to tell you that. I just want you to know we're your partners trying to figure this out. Too many guns are available in our community.
Hear, hear.
The gentleman that talked about education for our children, this is really paramount importance. I actually teach gardening. I'm a farmer, a little urban farmer, and I took it to a school, and we've been teaching gardening for about 7 years. We're in Georgia, y'all. Yet we got Georgia children that do not know anything about growing food. The majority of the people live in the city. The majority grow in areas outside. And I'm telling you, there's a big disconnect. And when we had this emergency for COVID, we really felt it, didn't we? Our store shelves were, minimal food, and then we worried about the quality of food, and then who all is inspecting the food through USDA. And yes, we have a great relationship with USDA. Yes, we do have a farm number, and we are a registered farm. So my point is going back to what you said. Along with you all have put, the Department of Education has put agriculture under workforce development. Y'all know that, right? As opposed to entrepreneurial, conceptual, or land ownership, or, those kind of things. So I'm not sure. I'm still figuring out how delegates fit in, where the commissioner fits in. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like it's a lot of people, and I love that, by the way.
Would you
I love
please
them
give us your
unincorporated.
name and where you
I'm
live?
sorry,
really
I'm
interested.
Terry Ali, and I'm in 30032. The farm is in 30316. And I'm encouraging us as a community to pay attention to our food. I'm encouraging us as elected officials to pay attention to, because there's a lot of money coming down for agriculture. Have you all noticed all this money? And it's not coming into DeKalb County. So I'm encouraging you to not let that farm bill and different things just sit on the sideline. I want you to know there's a constituency of a large group. I'm connected with about 40 urban farmers. And together we, just recently, farmers lost 80% of their crop with that freeze we had a couple of weeks ago for 9 degrees. And everybody was scrambling. Oh my goodness, now what do we do? And it was a gentleman 2 hours away who was raising seedlings. He didn't even think he was going to sell them this year because we all had food already. So he sold us 1,000 plants for just $30. So farmers met right here up on Glenwood, and we shared seedlings, like around 10,000 seedlings were shared amongst maybe about a dozen farmers, just to get people food in the ground, to get it going again. So I'm just saying to you, let's not be unclear about that. I don't even know. Who do I ask to find out how many farms are even in DeKalb County? Do we know how many farms are in DeKalb
Miss
County?
Ali, are you connected with the DeKalb Extension Service?
I am.
And the Farm Bureau
Yes, ma'am.
Association?
Mhm.
I met with them about a month ago, and they were talking very similarly
Very
to what you are.
Because I asked them.
And they want to do more awareness and
Yes,
get more
ma'am.
children involved in school.
Yes.
And I would love to chat with you more after
I would
the
love
meeting
that.
is over.
Because there's no money. I'm a grant writer, used to work for a foundation, so I know how to write grants. And I write grants all the time to keep money coming in too, to keep the food going and keep the education going. We have weekly mandatory classes, and I want to see that at all schools. That shouldn't just be at a little school or just us. So thank you all for listening.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Ms. Ali.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and thank you to those who are here. I'm Representative Karen Bennett. I represent House District 94, and I'm glad that you bring that up. And in addition to the county extension services, what we'd like to do is partner and speak with constituents such as yourself, because a lot of the ideas and the budgetary matters, we can be informed by our constituents, and we can work together and perhaps look at ways to get monies into the budget for certain projects. But we do need our constituents to help us with ideas as well. So I thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm more than willing to do that.
Good afternoon. I'm Jocelyn O'Neill. I live in the Greater Towers area. A couple of years ago, as a matter of fact, 2020, I had the opportunity of going to New York with DeKalb County with the GVI. They call it Group Violence Intervention. I call it Gang Violence Intervention. But in the process of going to that, when we came back to debrief, I found out that in DeKalb County, we have inmates that don't serve more than 13 months, I think, at our jail. But there's an overpopulated enrollment for continuing education. Many of them don't get a chance to finish that continuing education process because they may be released. So then I'm thinking about what happens when they're released. And we talk about Piedmont College and some of the other technical colleges that they have established in DeKalb County. Many of them require a GPA. Many of the inmates, or some of the, I'll say, guys or ladies that are standing around in the communities, don't have a GPA because many of them never got the passport to life, which is that high school diploma, or their parents didn't get it. So they don't have a great interest in promoting school for those children that are, or the young people, or the youth that are causing a lot of trouble in our communities. So when we look at these technical programs that we are encouraging people to go into, you have to consider that many of them don't have a diploma. They don't have a GPA. So are these programs advertising? And there's very little advertisement anymore as far as resource development in DeKalb. It used to be a real popular thing. You hardly ever hear it anymore. I thank you, Ms. Bennett, for your newsletters. They come to me regular. Miss Becky, Miss Viola. I get that type of information. But I want to put out here that while we're doing this legislating, that we're trying to encourage legislation for those who don't have a GPA or those who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated, to encourage them to get into a program. My husband and I were coming from North Carolina last year, and I was telling him, I said, well, you know, I would like to be able to, because I talk to a lot of people on my streets. I live on Glenwood Road, and many of them know me. I talk to anybody. I'll help them if they want. They say they will need some help. I do some stuff. Okay, Viola, I know what you're talking about, and I'm going to try to wrap this up. Mr. Chris gave me an idea, though. Nobody behind me. But anyway, I just say we need to start doing a little bit more connection with our legal system to try to make sure that we have people that are coming out. We can't track them all, but continuing education programs are really important. And I admire the lady speaking on the gardening. I used to work in the DeKalb County schools, and a few times I had to give the testings. And one of the things, and I hated the test that they gave our children for the simple fact it had nothing to do with urban children. Now, I've been out of the system 12 years now, but one of the questions on one of the third grade tests that I was given was, where do peas grow from, bushes or vines? How many of our urban children have ever seen where a pea grows from? All they know is in a can or in a basket at the grocery store. So we need that encouragement. How many people know that a banana, does it grow on a tree? Anybody know about a banana? They say banana tree. Where does banana grow? It grows on a stalk. That is not a tree. But they test our children on stuff like that, and they have no experience with anything as far as agriculture. Okay? Now, Miss Becky, I'm glad you said East Lake. I'm going to get down just a second. East Lake Golf Course. I sent them 18 pictures of the trees that are a hazard over our Glenwood Road. The first thing that the man said to me was, that's a state road. I said, I don't care if it's a state road. It's behind the pole, and it's behind the metal ironing that goes up and down the road. So that's your stuff. But these major, filthy, rich companies get away with murder because nobody want to touch that. I ain't afraid of them. I sent them the 18 pictures. I've sent it to them 3 times. And if anybody rides down Glenwood Road from Publix, well, really all the way down Glenwood, you see where there's no paint on the street. You can't tell if you're on the right side, left side. Last year, my husband and I were almost hit at night in the rain because they need paint. DeKalb County does not paint. They contract someone out of state, North Carolina or South Carolina. Why is it our state and our counties don't have the equipment to take care of the business of our constituents? The only reason we knew where we were at one point was because the pine leaves had blown in the middle of the street. That was a dividing line. Consider this. I don't know what all you all have all this money, but consider this. If it's state, our state people need to be taking care of it. That's my statement. I'm held hostage because I had a break-in 1992. I've been paying for security ever since. I've paid enough to almost refurnish my house. The gun control and these criminal laws, they're going to have to be stronger. You're going to have to stand up for us because many of you have probably experienced some of these things too. The break-ins in your cars, the break-ins in your house. You're not above that either. But those are the statements that I wanted. And the utility companies, they don't pay us any attention. They're very disrespectful. If you drive back to your neighborhoods or in the neighborhoods around you, they're broken poles and hanging wires. I've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years. Wires hanging everywhere. They take the black tubes. They'll do something. The utility will do something and lay the black tube on the ground beside the pole. That's either state or Georgia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss O'Neill. You know,
Madam Chair, may I share one thing, please? Miss Ali, thank you so much. And I didn't think about this when you were up there, but this past session we did pass legislation that will incorporate agriculture education in our elementary schools. I think 2 years ago there was a pilot that was done in some of the schools. It was so successful that now it will be in all of our elementary schools, and we should start seeing some of that coming down. So if like DeKalb, if you guys aren't aware of that, like I said, I serve on the education committee, and agriculture is very important to me as well. But I was really excited to see that it was going to be throughout the state and not just in select communities, because a lot of times we do have various pilots that come out education wise, but a lot of times they don't make it to our community. So this one I was really excited to see. So y'all's hard work and advocacy is being heard. So we will see some movement. I wanted to share that.
okay, hold on just a second. Miss O'Neill, I would absolutely like to see the pictures and everything from the broken poles. And I've been thinking how to legislate that, but I will most definitely be the champion to clean up because I also see that as well. So if you can send me the photos along with the addresses, I'd be very appreciative of that.
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and add that Miss O'Neill did send me the photos, and I did forward a letter to a couple of the companies along with copies of the pictures. So I can follow up with you afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lance Hammonds. I'm president of the DeKalb NAACP, and I also represent a community group called the Rockbridge Coalition. Representative Karen Bennett is my state rep. I'm also under the leadership of Gloria Butler. I'm in that area. As NAACP president, I just want to share with you some of the things that we get calls for in our branch. We get a lot of calls about criminal justice. We get calls from the jail. We get calls from people who have loved ones incarcerated or loved ones who are awaiting trial. They've not always been convicted being in jail. Jail does not mean you've been convicted. And so we're concerned about the safety of people in jails. One of our members lost a son in the Gwinnett County Jail. So as you look at the criminal justice system in our state, look at the safety of the people in there, but also consider reentry. Reentry is important. You need to do a better job considering reentry. Here in DeKalb County, our probation department office, they put together a regional office. It's in Conyers. So if you're in DeKalb County, you can get the bus all the way to the DeKalb Rockdale line, but you got to get a cab or a bus or whatever. So it makes it more difficult. So please be aware of how to make it easier for people who are trying to reentry to do their probation and complete those programs that keep them out of jail. We also get a lot of calls about people worried about being homeless and losing their homes. Where do I go? What do I do? Who do I call? So people are still hurting. People are still looking for money to pay their bills. A lot of folks are still struggling from the effects of COVID. So it's not over yet, even though that we all don't have to have masks and wear masks 24/7. There are still impacts of that COVID that hit our community. One of the things that we get a lot of talk about is education. Education is the key to making our community better. And Representative Carter, you do great work. Keep it up. But focus on how do we increase or make our schools better? What's the end result? And when I look at data, when you look at, if you do some comparison, how do we bring things up? Maybe part of that is the median incomes of families. If you can increase the median income of a family, they can do more for themselves. Also, jobs. I'm so tired of seeing these plants and new businesses ending in counties around us. And I know there could be other factors. And I know we didn't have enough land to have the Rivian plant in DeKalb County, or the county that our delegation serves. But we need more of that from the economic development at the state level to bring these things to our community so we can increase those median household incomes. And lastly, there are industries that are coming to the area, like EV. There's a lot of talk about electric vehicles. Our community, underserved communities, are going to get left out in that equation. So as you hear about legislation and things coming down the pipe about we want to do EV with this and EV with that, because most of the states are looking at putting in a network of electric chargers along the interstates to make this thing happen. So make sure that underserved communities are also part of this equation to do this. And there are federal funds available to take part in this. So we need to make sure that that's done. Now, the last thing, I just said last thing, but this is really the last thing. This is for my own community. And Senator Parent and Jones, if you would, I want to send you some information on this. I know you guys just finished a Senate subcommittee on HOAs and that type of thing. There is HOA abuse going on in our community. And I copied Representative Bennett on an issue in my neighborhood. We spent over $20,000 trying to get a valid election in our HOA because of old quorum laws in our HOAs. It's hard to change those rules out. So we've got a non-paying non-resident that is a member of our HOA board that the courts say that's okay. That is not okay. So we need some help with that to get that done. And then it's not just our community. There's other communities that fight with HOAs, and I don't want to put all HOAs in one basket because a lot of them do good work. But it is important that we look at those type of things and make sure it's done. And bottom line is, what's the quality of life in our community? So when the session is over and you've cast your votes, hopefully you can say, the work that I've done added to the quality of life of our community. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Thibodeau. I am a resident of Stonecrest. I find myself now in District 91 and in Senate District 10. I just came to, bring up the quality of life issues being brought about by the institutional investors and their, investment in our community. I also work for the DeKalb County School District, and I think that what you will find is a common thread with the schools that are challenged, and some people term failing, I don't like that term, is the amount of transiency among the student population. When a school, it starts out with half the students, with 100% of the students, and half those students by the end of the year are at another school and have been replaced by students that started at another school, it's very difficult for the best teachers and the most talented principals to establish student achievement in those schools. A lot of that is driven by the externalities of institutional investments in our community. I understand the headwind that you guys are facing with the lobbyists and the opposing party in this case, because I believe all of you are Democrats, the opposing party in this case and the support that they get. I'm going to suggest a different strategy. I know that public policy does not normally change with sweeping legislation that changes things at one time. Legislation and policy change incrementally. Can we start by nibbling around the edges and making these institutional investors at the very least responsible landlords? Can we start putting some rules in place? Because I know there's a lot of laws in Georgia that protect them. You can't even make a list of renters. But if we can even say the mom and pops that have 50 homes or less are exempt, we have companies that own 50,000 homes. That's a whole city. When you talk about, when Mrs. Mary Margaret Oliver brought up the percentage of homes that are owned by institutions, the population that represents, and the families that live in those homes, I think that's enough of an impetus to at least start a discussion that these institutional investors, at the very least, have to be responsible landlords. We may not be able to stop them just yet from buying so much. We may not be able to limit them in what they do, but I believe that we can do some nibbling around the edges to start chopping away at this issue. And I think that just might be a good place to start. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau. We talked about this Thursday night, and I know that housing is a huge issue for our delegation and for the state. There's a crisis of affordable housing, and one of the there are many things to look at there, but this issue of holding institutional investors accountable. And I have had a conversation with a colleague across the aisle, and this is actually one thing that he brought up, saying that maybe is there a way to put a lien on these big companies if they're not making their maintenance. So the conversation is going on. We will see where it goes, but it really is a crisis. And what is like encouraging in a bad way is that, like, even the Georgia Chamber of Commerce said housing is a crisis in Georgia. So I feel like it's like everyone realizes it on all types of housing, but we especially do need to work on this institutional investor question, and it is complicated, as we've been alluding to. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, may I add, there was over about 6 meetings on housing, from studies to hearings, to include the HOA abuse. So the issue of housing and home ownership is going to be a top priority during this session. So rest assured, it's going to be addressed this session.
And there's just one other thing that I think you made some really, really good points and issues. And a lot of the things that we've been thinking about as well regarding these investors and how to make these organizations much more responsible. The problem I have is, and perhaps this is a dialogue we can have later on, what do you consider to be responsible? One of the things these institutional investors are doing is requiring those that live in these properties to pay a certain fee for the maintenance and upkeep. And that's been viewed as a way of kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of ripping out some of those tenants that live in these particular properties. So there's a lot of things that need to be vetted, and certainly I would encourage you to reach out to me so we can continue this dialogue. It is an issue that I'm particularly concerned about because in the district I represent and the district that you live in is one of the hardest hit in the state. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hosting this town hall and for giving space for the citizens to share our concerns with you. My name is April Thomas, and I am a new co-chair of the DeKalb Cityhood movement. My family has resided in southern DeKalb since 1979, and in the span of those 44 years since then, I have seen the quality of life of the residents of our area steadily decline. Thus, when I learned about the cityhood movement, I did my due diligence and decided to support the formation of a city in southern DeKalb, and specifically I live in 30034. Last year, since 2012, we've seen the people of Brookhaven, Stonecrest, Tucker, South Fulton, and most recently Mableton exercise their right to vote to determine whether or not they wanted to become a city. These areas all subsequently voted to become cities. Last year, we saw 3 proposed cities in Cobb County, and in 2015, 1 proposed city in DeKalb exercise their right to vote, though these people, the people in these areas, decided they did not want to become a city. The people of southern DeKalb have met the requirements as outlined by state legislation. However, we have not been granted an opportunity to exercise our right to vote yea or nay on becoming a city, unlike the other 9 locales I mentioned earlier. We at DCM and myself were encouraged by the progress that's been made for the other cities I've mentioned for their local incorporation, and particularly in the metro Atlanta area. And many of our neighboring communities have secured the right to vote to be self-governing. Today, I am here to exercise and to state that same desire that we here in South DeKalb desire to be self-governing. We've heard so many comments and so many issues, from Representative Carter. You're saying we've just got issues, and everybody else has shared along what those issues are. And so while we may not agree on the solution, and there are people who say yes for cityhood, there are people who say no to cityhood, for me, the bigger issue is, can we have that opportunity to vote? And what I would like to learn from you all is just what are some next steps that for us to be able to secure the vote? Because Ms. Claudette mentioned this feasibility study that was done in 2014. We did the feasibility study, from what I understand, even when it was current from her definition in 2014, we still didn't get an opportunity to vote. She also mentioned, that people weren't aware of cityhood. You've asked people of walking along Rainbow or wherever in DeKalb County, particularly in southern DeKalb, that they weren't familiar with it. To that, I would say there have been times when I've gone to vote and there have been legislation that I hadn't been asked about, that I wasn't familiar with. That doesn't mean that it hadn't gotten out there. I just wasn't familiar with it. But that didn't prevent it from being voted on. And so my question is just, what is it? We are committed to seeing this through to get an opportunity to vote. And I would like to hear from you all, what in the future, what can we do to secure that opportunity to vote? Thank you.
Madam Chair, when I was first elected in 2018, in 2019, I made it a point to make a list, an agenda, and cityhood was a priority on that list. I initiated a non-binding referendum that would have allowed the vote, right? And you would have been able to assess which precinct, by precinct, who was for the city and who was against, because it was such a divisive issue. And I was going to ask 2 questions. One was do we want to keep CEO, form of government? And the second was, do you want to be in the city? And it was a basic yes, no question. I pretty much was attacked by the people who were for and the people who was against. Nobody wanted it. Now, the problem we're going to run into is when you do a binding piece of legislation with a population that's over, 200, 300,000 people, a number of people are going to ask, how do you educate that number of people? And the people in opposition are going to have a particular hard time because they're not going to be able to raise that money to educate over 300,000. The people who are for won't have to worry because this is big money. So the likelihood that they can raise funding increases dramatically. So I addressed that issue back in 2018, 2019, and now we're here in 2023. And I'm not going to lie to you, a lot of the people in my district do not want cityhood.
May I ask a follow-up question? You said that, the educating 300,000 people, it's about 294,000 for 300,000 people is a challenge. Would it be possible that the delegation could sponsor some type of event where there could be a pros and cons session for that information? Because if it's coming from the legislation or the delegates, that's you all have a much larger voice than either opposition or proponents for, and that would give everyone equal space to hear both sides.
So here's, and I think for me, the most important piece of information that was shared when Ms. Claudette was up here is there has to be a charter. And this is one of the things that I don't know if everyone who wants to be in a city, who wants to vote, do or don't understand. When you are given the opportunity to have that bill, act, whatever we call it, on a ballot, it's gonna ask you, do you want a city? You're gonna say yes or no, right?
Right.
That's what you vote on. We, before you even can get to that point, we have a piece of legislation. In this case, it's called a charter.
Right.
So if you are really committed to this process, that's where you start.
Well, I do want to say we do have a charter, so I'm not sure where Ms. Cart and Ms.
So and the one that y'all had was flawed, and we've told them before that they need to go back and work on it. So your question now is, where do you start? You start with you need to draft a charter. You need to do your research. You need to look at some of these other new cities and some of the issues they've had and some of the things that have happened, because forming a government, this is a huge task. And people who are entrepreneurs, people who are business owners, it's a lot that goes into starting a business. Well, starting a city is not a business. It's a government.
Right.
So I'm saying to you, I don't want you, so you'll get, and if you want to take the charter that y'all had and work on that the work is on you guys to do that piece first. Before you could do anything else, you've got to have a charter that makes sense, that the legislators that represent those areas where you want to incorporate, it's got to make sense.
Okay.
If I can just add one thing as well, but I would also mention to you that there's other forms of government in this state. There's consolidated government, and that's been bounced around as well. I'm sorry, what about now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just saying that there's other forms of government other than just cities in the state of Georgia. There's consolidated government. A great example of how consolidated government works has been the Athens-Clarke County area, as well as the Columbus-Muskogee area. And we've had people approach us about consolidating the government in South DeKalb with the county and this whole entire area. You get the benefits of being a city. You also get the benefits of being consolidated government as well with the county. So I would encourage those that are looking at the cityhood effort not to just limit it to, we just got to have a city. Look across the state and see what some of the other forms of government and study those that have worked well. I don't live in, not lived in the Athens-Clarke County area. I did live for 10 years down in the Columbus-Muskogee area, on and off, part-time, by the way. So that would certainly be something that I would encourage you all to consider as well.
Thank you very much. And I
You're
appreciate the feedback and to Representative Tran's comments about us being more involved. We look forward to talking with each of you all as we continue this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to allow you, and then you can be our last speaker. Okay. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My concern is that I want to advocate for seniors and quality of life in DeKalb County as it results, as it relates to telemarketers. I am inundated from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. with telemarketers. What legislation? Y'all can legislate everything else. Get these people off of our backs so that we can enjoy our lives. I had to get a special phone system where it blocks calls from AT&T. But that also blocks calls from people I know overseas. It blocks calls or whatever. And the bottom line, y'all, is I'm paying for this. We are all paying to be harassed. Can you do something about it? Thank you.
Did you give your name, ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry. PJ Lemuel.
P.
J.
I'm concerned about that too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm a senior also, but I don't think that problem is just limited to seniors, and I appreciate your concern, and I too will be looking into that. So that's PJ
Lemuel.
Livingwell.
Lemuel.
Thank
Lemuel.
you. Lemuel.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Alexander, and I'm in 30294. Also, I am the co-chair of DCM, DeKalb City Movement. I appreciate the feedback that the team provided to my co-chair. And I'm going to keep it short. I know we have time for us to get up out of here. So there are a couple of things that I want to put in front of your radar above the line so that you can keep in consideration. Obviously, I'm a cityhood person. I grew up in the city, and so I feel the benefits, and I also understand like my new friend Claudette Leaks, who I just met today, but I consider a friend because we have opinions about something we feel passionate about. Just a couple of things real quick. I do believe that it's time for us to stop kicking the can around and creating obstacles or apparent obstacles so that we don't come together and put this thing to a vote. I understand that there may be difficulties that may not move people personally. We expect our leadership, our legislation, our representatives to support the will of the people when they are looking to make decisions for their area. So I want to put that out there. The next thing I want to kind of put into play is that I challenge the team up here, our delegates, to have an open mind about the opportunity of our self-determination. And even though it may be personally not within your wheelhouse to say, yeah, that's something that's good for you, but we expect that you support the will of the people in order to, for all intents and purposes, have a vote on this thing. Oh, sure, thank you. For us to have, let's do this. There we go, a little bit taller these days. For us to have a vote on this issue. I think that the conversation about a charter is valid, yet we look at DeKalb County's charter. When was the last time they looked at it? Before this time. So the charter thing is pretty suspect in the conversation of us talking about cityhood or the opportunity for a referendum to allow us to vote. And that's the important piece, the referendum, which would be carried by your team.
You don't understand the problem.
Well, I'm just making a statement. So if we can't get a referendum then passed through and signed by the governor, then we can't vote.
Yeah, but the only way you're going to get a referendum, you have to have a piece of legislation. And in this case,
So I appreciate that. So, and I agree. I understand what you're saying. I fully do. But what I'm saying is when we talk about relevancy, and I get it, so that we can write up a charter. In particular, we had a charter previously, and the charter was accepted. So I don't know when it became flawed because the bill was actually sponsored then shelved, but the charter was accepted. That happened. So that was kind of confused me because we had one that worked, and now all of a sudden it doesn't work. But I'm gonna leave that alone because I'm gonna let you guys do, and I'm gonna finish. The last thing, which was more interesting, I challenge you guys for a different reason. When we had conversations and notions about lobbyists, I challenge you guys to try to withstand the pressure of the lobbyists. Because as we have people here who have individual issues, and I got that look from
yeah, because okay.
I know, you know what I'm saying?
You guys, I think you guys get us mixed up with what they do in DC versus what we do here in Georgia. So we're not.
Well, you mentioned the lobbyists, and it was mentioned here about the lobbyists when we were talking about real estate. That was just mentioned. That was just mentioned, and she was sitting right next to you. Yeah, that was just mentioned. So the challenge I'm making, I'm saying that if there's a response that comes up and say, you know who's a powerful lobby, and we have lobbyists here in this, then as a philosophy, we should resist the lobbyists. That's where I'm going. I mean, obviously we have people who care we're not lobbyists and who don't have deep pockets, but we expect the same representation, the equal representation as a lobbyist with $1 million. Is that a panacea? Sure it is. It's crazy. But can you do it? Sure. Because we have people here who are individuals, and at the end of the day, when a corporation or a lobbyist, and if a corporation is looked at as a single entity, when you go and vote, it's a vote. And we accept the same representation. We expect the same representation.
I would like to add quickly, the debt that I had from when I ran for office is pretty much still there. There's a lot of us that really don't get money from lobbyists. And when I did the town hall the town hall on housing, the HOAs, past splits and all that, the result of doing that, just having the town hall hearing from the people, now I have about a good 5 to 6 attorneys that just pretty much follow everything I say and do. So there's a lot of times that there's costs to doing what the people want. And it's not to say that my fellow legislators are doing the opposite. It's just a lot of things when it deals with politics and with legislation that even when I, as an activist, unhappy taxpayer voter, there's a lot of things that I did not understand that goes on at the Gold Dome. I will admit that we have to do a better job of educating and informing you, and know that every day that is a challenge, because we get $7,000 a year to run our office. $2,000 of it is gone before I even walk through the door.
So I appreciate that transparency, and that's what we need, transparency. We're talking about cityhood. There was a board of commissioner, and they were asked about cityhood. The commissioner said this, and I quote, "If we were doing our job, then there would not be a conversation about cityhood." Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Young man, would you give us your name, please?
Sure, it's Kevin Alexander.
Mr. Alexander, might I also add for myself, and I did have a church conference this morning, which was why I was late, so I came in on the end of the cityhood conversation, but I did hear Ms. Leak. And for me personally, a lot of time has expired since the initial feasibility study. I would love to see an updated feasibility study.
Sure, absolutely, thank you.
I'd like to leave you guys with this. We've got 44 brand new state representatives coming into the legislature. Many of them are going to be naive like me. We don't know the issues. I can't discuss cityhood as well as our veteran legislators. But we're coming in with an open mind, and we want to do good for Georgia, which means hearing from you, hearing from the organizations that you're supporting to help get cityhood happen. I'm going to go back to the pad split institutional investors. I'm going to give you guys something that I consider concrete that maybe you guys can pressure your mayors and city councils and the DeKalb commissioners. Because what I want to see happen in my city of Dunwoody is a separate millage rate, basically a separate tax rate for institutional investors and pad splitters. Not so much for the revenue, but as a deterrent. I can't affect that as much as my city council, my mayor, right? So come up with solutions like that. Push it in front of your mayor and city council and county commissioners. And when they struggle, that's when they turn to us and we look for a state solution. That's my naive freshman perspective on how to approach these things.
Madam Chair, and I tried to keep my piece on the pad split. So this is a huge, huge issue. We have a housing issue, right? Someone walked up and talked about how COVID has affected people having a hard time paying their rent, people who are homeless. We got all these different things going on. So please don't miss when we're having a pad split conversation that some of the people who are living in pad splits, if they did not have a pad split, will be on the street. So let's have a comprehensive housing conversation. And it is very involved. But I also want to say, don't be naive when some of the conversation around affordable housing is hidden in this investor market. So this is a huge, huge, huge issue, and we can't get one-sided. And I know when we are very protective of our street and our neighborhood, right? And cause trust me, I get that. But we also, when we're having this conversation, just please be open so we can fully flesh out all of the issues that we've discussed and how it comes back to housing, right? So that's my ask. Just, I know, we don't want a lot of these things in our neighborhoods, but we also are caring people, and we don't like to see homeless people on the street, right? So we got to try to figure out how do we figure this out.
Change your language around it and go from affordable housing to fair housing. Because affordable housing, and listen to me, affordable housing, the conversation for the past 20 years has been how to get people to be able to afford to buy a house.
Right. So
and fair housing is about putting roofs over people's heads.
Right, but the context in the legislation that came up last year that they did the study committee on, that it was termed in affordable housing, but it was really about these investors coming in, building homes that they're renting. So you're correct. So we definitely need to expand our context around what it looks like to have someone to have somewhere to live, where they can afford to live, where they're safe, where they can bring up their families. So so we could definitely explore how we expand this conversation. But affordable housing in its past session wasn't what we understand as affordable housing.
Okay, you all. Thank all of you for coming. All of us have newsletters. Please reach out to us. We've heard what you said. We have weekly meetings. They will begin person probably in 2 weeks. Please come down, continue to be engaged with us individually, and we value what you say, and we want to make our lives, all of our lives, because we all live in the same communities, better. So thank you again, and we will see you shortly.